Hello, good afternoon. All right, there are 18 of you right now. Good. Good afternoon po. Magandang hapon po. Ayan, late tayo ng konti kasi nag-i-email pa ako dun sa mga classmates niya. We've been delayed for a while as usual because I've been emailing, getting in touch with your other classmates. All right, so before anything else, let's go fill out our attendance check. All right, our responsibility to our nation. If you practice now, helping your society as much as you can, the more you practice, then when the challenge comes around in the future as adults, as corporate people in the future, and the challenge is out there for you to help society, it would be easy for you because why? You have practiced as a student helping out your society. In our case, attending classes as much as you can. All right? Have you seen that? Let me share the screen. I gave you the attendance form. All right? Can you see that? Okay. Attendance form. Please fill this out. All right. Meanwhile, as we await for the others and you're filling out the attendance form, let me call your attention to just a handful of questions. In fact, less than a handful. All right. Let's talk about love. As if I am a DJ talking about love. All right, there goes your Mentimeter. All right. Oh, excuse me. There goes your Mentimeter questions. All right. Okay. Let's see. Is love real? All right. Some of you have already answered earlier. Okay. Yeah. I think I gave you the wrong. Wait. Is that the answer now? Yes. Yes, it is. Oh, 11. 11 say yes. Yeah. 50. Oh, we still have our outliers. One says no. No. Two outliers. Exciting class. No. And then, of course, the others say, yes, depending on what you mean, sir, by love. Love can have so many meanings. Of course. And then one says, well, I have no answer. I have not yet fallen in love. Good for you. You have no problems. All right, 25 of you are saying yes. Two say no. Three say yes and no. And two say, well, no answer. Well, you're too young to find out. All right, let's move on. Oh, 26. Oh my God. Love is real, huh? Are you sure? Okay, next question. Supposing one does not have any linguistic expression for love, is it possible for him to know what love is? Well, nobody's saying no. Oh, we have two. And then we have one who says yes and no, and then mostly answer yes. Yes. All right. Yeah, okay. Very consistent, huh? Two say yes and no, and two say no. All right. More are saying no. No. Okay. Let me remind everyone. All right. Supposing you have no linguistic expression, what will happen? Well, you can express without language using your painting, audiovisual material. Your painting to express love. Or your sculpture to express love. Di ba? Physical expression of love. Or on February 14, for example, you express love in terms of taste. You give someone something sweet to express, Oh, that's the kind of love we have between us. It's so sweet, all right? Or if you hate what's going on, you give someone something that is terribly bitter. Oh, that's the kind of relationship we have. All right, I hope you die. All right, so you can express beyond linguistic expression. So long as you have your physical capability to do so, why not? All right? Something physical like a painting or a sculpture or something sweet that you can taste or something fragrant that you can smell like a bunch of flowers. All right, you can do that. But this is the more complex question. One absolutely does not have any physical way of expressing love, as with songs, sculptures, all right, roses, cakes, nothing at all. No books, no linguistic expressions, no poems, no songs, no paintings, no form of art, no computer encoding, nothing physical. Still possible for anyone to know love? Someone said no. 8 said no. Yes. Someone said no answer, just one. And 3 say yes and no, depending on what you're talking, what your meanings are, Professor De Villa. But mostly, everybody will say yes. 23 of you. Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, all right? Here on YouTube. Chat, let me ask you a question. So, how do you tell anyone or even yourself independent of anything physical? Okay, tell me about it. How do you tell anyone about love independent of something physical? Not only anyone, tell yourself. All right? How do you tell yourself? Because remember, when you tell yourself, you have to have your brain, something physical. All right? When you tell yourself, you have to have your thoughts, and your thoughts are expressed in sentences. And they're physical. All right? Actions, Mr. Cruz. Well, actions require bodies. Bodies are physical, material things. All right? So you still need something physical. You even need your eyes to see the physical expression of the actions. All right? So how can anyone say anything about love independent of any physical form of expression? All right? No, I can't, because even without the so-called objects of love, such as gifters, etc., well, when you communicate, you need something physical. That's what we're talking about. All right, let's get back to our Google Classroom. We'll get back to your comments later. Thanks for your comments. I see them. Our subject for today, language, remember. All right, this is our subject for today. Let me share the screen. Remember, this is our topic for today, language. And specifically, we are talking about the technical definition of a language. There you go. All right? That's our topic for today. Now, what is a language? All right? A language, okay, let's use Wikipedia. A language, okay, what's a language? A language is what? A system of communication, a method of communication. All right, so what is it all about? All right, let's use Google. Language. What's a language? All right, this is your commonsensical expression of what a language is. What's your commonsensical expression? Here goes. Language is the method of human communication, as pointed out by Wikipedia. Okay, communication. Language is a method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured or conventional way. All right, focus your attention on either spoken or written. This is your commonsensical definition of what a language is. That is very common. Let me repeat, commonsensical. Why commonsensical? Well, which common? Now, we are interested in the technical definition. Why? Because commonsensical definition harps on either it is spoken or written. When you say spoken, you hear it. When you say written, you see it. But guess what? It's actually possible to express a language in terms of feel or touch. Remember Braille? When you use Braille, you do not use your eyes. When you use Braille, you do not use your ears. You use your sense of touch. And remember what? We have, what do we have? We have 5 senses. All right? We have 5 senses. We use our eyes. All right? So, written. We use our ears. So, spoken. But these are not the only things that we use when we communicate. We use our sense of touch. All right? With our skin. And in fact, sometimes we communicate, I have already pointed out, like on February 14, Valentine's Day, we use our sense of taste. All right? We use our sense of taste. We express sweetness. We express love with sweetness. All right? Taste. And of course, there's an entire industry where you use your sense of smell. You communicate with your smell. That's why you buy perfume and cologne and all those sorts of things. All right? So we have 5 senses. And commonsensical definitions of language harp only on 2. We don't like that. So we use our technical definition of a language. All right? Now, why language? Why language in the first place? What's our interest in language? Remember, all right, remember, when we talk about the Greeks, we talk about their very unique, what? Method of reflection. Very unique method of reflection. All right? And what's their method of reflection? Remember, when you see a tree, all right, that was our example, and you see a pet carabao somewhere, all right, and you have a mind, all right, what are we saying? Somehow your mind reflects what you see outside your world. So you have your thought about the tree in your mind. You have your thought about your carabao in your mind, all right? Remember? And then what happens? You express your thought about your carabao in some word. Yes? Word about the carabao. Word about the tree. All right? And so, what are we saying? You remember, for the Greeks, the interest is what? The interest is all about what? Wisdom. Remember? All about wisdom. The thought that one day the sun has risen from the east, and another day, and another day, and another day. The thought that, as a rule, whenever the sun rises, it rises from the east. The thought that if tomorrow the sun will rise, it will rise from the east. The thought that for all free-falling bodies, F equals ma equals mc squared, and so many thoughts. And all these thoughts, so-called wisdom, connected to one another, are what? Expressed in linguistic form. We have knowledge as infants, all right? We have knowledge as infants. Like, even if you're just an infant, all right? Infant. Even if you're just an infant, a baby. All right? Baby. Even if you're just an infant, you know when to cry and when not to cry. You have not yet learned your first word, and you know when to cry and when not to cry. You know when you're hungry and when you're not hungry. You know that thanks to your what? Your genetic inheritance. All right, that's good. But guess what? Most of your thoughts in your minds are what? Are linguistic. This table is brown for all free falling bodies, F equals ma. Whenever the sun rises, it rises from the east. Yesterday, the sun has risen from the east. Most of your thoughts are linguistic. Your genes are incomparable as receptacles of information compared to your thoughts as receptacles in form of linguistic expressions. And so, before we know how our thoughts relate to one another under some harmony, let's first talk about how we express our thoughts themselves as linguistic expressions. All right? So, as linguistic expressions, we want to know what is the nature of these linguistic expressions. Ergo, our interest in the definition of a language. All right? And this is our technical definition of a language. We get it from Collier's Encyclopedia. There you go. All right, we get it from Collier's Encyclopedia. Can you see this? All right, let me show that. Collier's Encyclopedia, language, written by William P. Alston. Now, who is William P. Alston? By the way, later I will give you a copy of that article in Collier's Encyclopedia. Now, maybe next meeting. William P. Alston is not an ordinary fellow. He's a professor from Michigan University, Michigan State University. He used to teach in some other Ivy League schools and so popular in the United States. First-rate philosopher, although he has just died fairly recently, an old man. But we want to use his technical definition of a language. All right? This is his technical definition of a language. A language is, all right, you have to memorize this for sure. This will be part of the exam. A language is a system of units realizable in some sensory medium, only certain combinations of which have meaning by convention and hence useful for communication. That's what a language is. You can see that, all right? Let me export this, by the way. Maybe I can do that. Well, later, I'll export that. I'll give that to you later, all right? Or maybe this is better. Okay? This is better, all right? Copy. I'll paste this on your, okay? Stream. What's the language? There you go. Okay? Posted. Language is a system of units realizable in some sensory medium, only certain combinations of which have meaning by convention and hence useful for communication. Okay? A very short expression. Now what? Well, it's a system. So, supposing you have a bunch of numbers, a pile of numbers here. Supposing you have a pile of numbers, all right, so you have a pile, a bunch of numbers. What's the difference between a pile or a bunch, a pile or a bunch of numbers on one hand, and a system of numbers? What's the difference? Oh, let me see. Any comment? I think it is possible to show our love without anything physical. Yes, Mr. Alvarado, we will go to that. Tama ka and punto. I don't think we can give or receive love independent of anything physical for actions, words, etc. Of course, we will go to that. Communicating it, Miss Irene Lee, how do you communicate anything without anything physical? That's what we're talking about. When you say abstract, you think about it. But when you think about it, Miss Irene Lee, you use your brain or you use your computers. No brain, no computer, no processing. No processing, nothing abstract you can talk about. But we'll go to that, Miss Lee. Question. The question might obstruct future slides. Well, oh nga, no? The question might obstruct future slides. Yes, okay. There you go. Thanks. Okay. So I ask a question. What's the question? What's the difference between a bunch of numbers or a pile of numbers and a system of numbers? There's a difference. Big difference. What do you think? All right, Miss Arorong, a system of numbers comprises a pile of numbers, but is set in an organized way. Exacto. All right, Miss Arorong, organized comes from the word organism. Yay! What's an organism? Well, something that is, organism. But anyway, hide. Okay, organism. Well, Miss Arorong, what's an organism? Well, an organism is something that is organized. Okay, system of numbers, organized, yes, everybody, Mr. Cruz, Mrs. Spratten, organized. Okay, exacto. Okay, very good. Everybody knows. Ang galing, ha? Si Mr. Alvarado. Ay, okay, sorry. Miss Ompakan. Okay. All right. A system has organization. All right. Like an organism. What's the organization of an organism? You have your system, and then you have your organs. And then your organs, you have your tissues. And then your tissues, you have your cells. And then your cells, you have your organelles. And you have your organelles, you have your macromolecules. And your micromolecules. And your atoms. And your subatomic particles. That's what a system is. You have some kind of order. Next question. How do you know you have order when you see one? All right. How do you know you have order when you see one? You taste it. You press it. You know, oh, it feels hard or it feels soft. Or you smell it. How do you know you have order when you see one? All right. When you have order, this is what you see. Supposing this is your domain. Inside domain, your domain, you have things in it, whatever. This may be numbers, or this may be words. And between your components or your units of your system, there is some kind of a relationship. All right? There is some kind of a relationship. When you have something, and you have another thing, and you have another thing, you relate them to one another, you end up with a pattern. And that's how you recognize when you have order. You have some kind of pattern. All right, so what is a system? A system is some domain of units governed by some order or organization or pattern. This domain or organization or pattern is expressed in rules. There you go, rules. Now, in a language, the organization, the order, the pattern of your domain, of your units, all right, what have I said? The order, the organization, the pattern, the rules of a language are called, obviously, rules of grammar. There you go. All right, so a language is governed by grammar or rules or patterns. Grammar or rules or patterns, all right? Now, there are 4 kinds of rules or grammar. 4. All right? Fortunately, we are all bilingual. We know Filipino or we know English. And for some of you, you know Filipino, English, and some other language. Or even better, some of you know Filipino, English, and some other languages. Very good. Which means all of us know that when you have one language compared to another language, there are rules that are unique to the languages. All right? These rules we can describe as internal to the languages. Some expressions in English cannot be expressed in Filipino. Some expressions in Filipino cannot be expressed in English. Some expressions, I'm sure, in Korean cannot be expressed in Filipino. There are rules governing each language that are internal, unique to the language. We all know that as bilinguals or multilinguals. These rules that are internal to the language, we will get back to them later. We call them rules of syntax. Rules of syntax. All right? I will not go deeper into this. You know that as bilinguals. All right? Now, let's get back to some other expression. Why? Some rules are very unique. Why? Well, remember, what did I tell you? As philosophers, we reflect. So you see a tree somewhere, somehow this tree, you can think about in your mind. That's yours. Thought about the tree. You have a pet carabao in your backyard. Somehow, this pet carabao can also be thought about in your mind. Yes. And so there you have it. And then you have your house. All right? And what can you say? Well, your hut, you can think about in your mind. In other words, there is a reflection of all things in this world. What do we call this? Your world, your universe. All right? What is your world or your universe? Well, it is also governed by order. Remember, for example, there is order among planets. Planets revolve around the sun in some elliptical form. Not a circle, all right, some ellipse. Not a circle, all right. When planets revolve around the sun, they do not revolve in circles. That never happens, all right? Never happens. They revolve in the form of ellipses as some kind of order, all right? They follow rules or patterns. Why do planets do that? Because, well, ellipses are cute. Circles are not. All right, I'm just kidding. But the point is, there is order in our world. All right? Undeniable. In other words, this whole world itself is a system. Just like your mind is a system of thoughts, all related to one another. All right? Now, meaning to say, we are saying when we express our language, somehow this thing here corresponds to this thing here. This thing here corresponds to this thing here. This thing here corresponds to this thing here. Yes? And it is this relationship that we are now calling attention to. All right? When you have a language, that's your language. You are saying it's related to your world. So maybe this is better. All right? This is your world of your language. This is your world of things in the universe. And what are you saying? You're saying both of them are related to one another under some kind of relationship. All right? This kind of relationship, notice, is something that is external to the language. Goes beyond the internal workings of a language. The internal workings of your language only involve the syntax. But notice, you're not only dabbling with your language, you're dabbling with something beyond your language, the world of objects, the world of planets and trees and pets. All right? So, this kind of relationship that is external, we call that, what do we call that? We call that the rules of semantics. All right, let's get back here. So not only do we have internal rules, internal rules, we also have external rules. Rules that relate our language to our world, all right? And this is something that is external to the language. This is your language, this is your world. We call this rules of semantics. Rules of semantics. All right? These two types of rules of syntax and rules of semantics, they are your necessary components of any language. You have to have both. Necessary. They cannot exist without the one. One cannot exist without the other. Let me give you an example. Supposing you have a language with only syntax, like the game of chess. Big problem. Why? Well, let me tell you. All right? If you have a language that only has syntax, you have a big problem. All right, what's your problem? Well, let me tell you. All right? Supposing this is your world of chess. All right? And you have internal rules. And given your internal rules, you somehow want to relate it to your world. All right? Chess. You have syntax. Question, is there any assumption that the rules of chess are necessary for you living your life in your world? Is there any compulsion to believe that the rules of the syntax of chess somehow affect your lives? For example, when people walk around in this world, do they walk around this way? All right, zip, all right, zip, all right, zip, all right, zip, all right, zip. Remember when you have your knight, all right, when you have your knight, your horse, all right, it moves in some way. Well, what am I saying? I'm saying between the language of chess, where you know the syntax of chess, and your world, there is no necessary connection that you presume. The relationship between the rules of chess and the rules of your world is just a matter of accident. It's not the same when you have a language. When you have a language, between your language and your world, you say the connection is very vital, the connection is very necessary, the connection is very important. Not like with chess. And how are we able to say that? Because with the rules of our language, we have the rules of semantics. All right? That's what we're trying to say. We have semantics. So, what are the two necessary components of any language? Syntax and semantics. All right? So far, so good. Syntax and semantics. Two necessary components of any non-trivial non-trivial. In other words, useful language. Chess has a language, but it is a trivial kind of language. There is no semantics involved. All right? So far, so good. Let me check. What are your comments so far? Miss Arada, I think there is order when everything in the group has something similar to each other. Well, yes, that's precisely why they belong to the group. And therefore, you have some kind of order at least. All right, systems would have some sort of organization or structure. That's what we're talking about, semantic structure. All right, we are talking about semantic and syntactical structures. All right, let's move on. A third kind of rule, all right, the third kind of rule for a language, all right, let's just write there, third kind of rule. Yeah. Well, anyway, let me get some other board. A third rule for a language is something you're very familiar with. Why? Because you've come across this in preschool. All right, the third rule we'll call the rule of phonetics. In other words, rules involving how to pronounce, pronunciation. Now, phonetics, I will not explain. You've come across that in preschool. You know, A is for apple, B is for baboy, B is for bat. I'm just kidding. Anyway, phonetics, you know that. You know, pronunciation. Take note, rule number 3, or phonetics, is something that is only required of natural languages. Similarly, rule number 4 is also something required of natural languages. All right, so natural languages require phonetics. Natural languages require rule number 4. All right, question, rule number 4. Has anybody ever seen a word that is composed of 10 or more syllables? Word composed of 10 or more syllables. Well, yes. You have the expression supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Oh. I'm just kidding. Well, apparently in German, you have expressions that go beyond 10 syllables. In Filipino, rarely do you have 10 syllables, I think. I'm not so sure. But the point is, there are terms that are composed of many syllables. Now, next question. Supposing you see a term that has 10 syllables, can you imagine the term to have 10 syllables and composed, expressed only in consonants? I doubt it. Yes? Consonants? I doubt it. What about a term that is composed of 10 syllables and all vowels? Can you imagine all vowels? An expression so long is composed of all vowels. You know, there are such expressions. Let me tell you. There are such expressions. All right? 10 syllables. Okay. Imagine a building. All right? Imagine a building. All right? Imagine some kind of a building. All right? Some kind of a building. All right? And a very tall building. And then someone falls from atop the building. Oh, I'm falling. All right? What are we talking about? When you fall from a building, you say, ah. Have you ever seen that expression? You know, when you are reading your Marvel comics or your DC comics, etc. Anyway, I'm just kidding. What am I talking about? Among us Asians, all right, among us Asians, we use words that are monosyllabic, single syllables can have meaning. All right? Single syllables can have meaning among Asians. Alright? Guess what? Among Indo-Europeans, they never have, among Indo-Europeans, they never have single syllables that have meaning. Never. Meaning to say, there are rules involving syllables, such that in some countries, single syllables can have meaning. In some countries, single syllables do not have meaning. In some countries, there are other rules that involve your syllables. And so, you now have your fourth rule. What's your fourth rule? Rule number 4 involves what we call rules of morphology. Rules of morphology. And what are rules of morphology? They are rules involving your syllables. All right? So, at the end, we can say there are 4 kinds of rules. 1, syntax. All right? You already know that. Syntax. 2, your semantics. All right? And you already know that. And 3, your phonetics. And 4, your morphology. For our purposes in logic and mathematics, our interest only will be syntax and semantics. All right? You deal with phonetics or morphology when you're involved with linguistics. But we're not involved in linguistics. We're only involved with logic and mathematics and reasoning. And so, for the moment, we will not deal with the last 2, phonetics and morphology. We will only deal with syntax and semantics. So far, so good. Can you follow me? All right. Let's get back to our sharing. Okay. Language is a system of units called terms governed by grammar composed of the rules of syntax, the rules of semantics, the rules of phonetics, and the rules of morphology. Now, getting back to the other components of our definition, take a look. All right, realizable in some sensory medium. We already pointed out, we cannot limit our sensory mediums or our sensory media to only our sense of seeing and sense of hearing. We have to include all of our 5 senses, realizable in some sensory medium. All right? That's what we want to deal with. Okay? Realizable in some sensory medium. Okay? There you go. Now, what does that mean? If you can sense it, remember, Mr. Iringan, if you can sense it, that means what? You can observe it. If you can observe it, that means what? It is physical. All right? Now, I cannot explain so much today because we have not enough time, but instead, I will ask you to see a movie. Movie? You want to see a movie? Well, you see, there is this movie that I want you to see. Optional. All right? What am I saying? Optional. Why is this optional? Well, it's a long movie. It's an hour and a half. There you go. Look at your Google Classroom. There is this movie. What's the title of the movie? All right. Johnny Got His Gun. That's the title of the movie. Johnny Got His Gun. And it's an award-winning movie. What's the movie all about? Well, let me tell you. Okay. Johnny Got His Gun. That's the movie. It's actually a novel that came around 1938. All right, an American novel. Then later in 1971, it became a film. All right, it became a film. Okay, very important film. Now, what is this all about? Let's see. What's the plot? All right, this is the plot. Joe Bonham, a young American soldier serving in World War I, awakens in a hospital bed after being caught in the blast of an exploding artillery shell. Direct hit. He gets hit by an artillery shell. He gradually realizes in the hospital that he has lost both his arms from the shoulders, both his legs from the hips, and all of his face, including his eyes, his, his nose, his ears, his teeth, his tongue, because they had to operate him. And there are very talented surgeons around. They keep him alive, but he loses his sense of sight. He loses his sense of hearing. He loses his sense of taste, and he cannot say anything. Supposing you are that soldier. Supposing you are that soldier. Big question. If you are that soldier, you now awaken from your comatose because you've been under comatose for 2 weeks. How will you feel? Well, you feel like you're in hell. Why? I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. I might be dead. I feel so alone. And guess what? This soldier takes a number of days, over 1 week, to find out he is not dead. He's in fact alive. And then another problem. Finally, he gets to realize he's not dead, he's alive. Now he has to find out, am I sleeping or am I awake? And then after so many days, over a week, he finally concludes, this is when I am awake, this is when I am asleep. It's so lonesome. I am probably, I surmise, in a hospital. I would rather die than live this kind of life all my life. Question, how do you tell anybody, can you please let me die? I don't want to live this kind of life. You know, he cannot move his arms, he has no arms. He cannot move his legs, he has no legs. He cannot say anything. He cannot hear anything, he cannot see anything. Can you imagine that kind of life? Would you want to live that kind of life, Mr. Arada or Miss Arada? All right? Miss Arada, how do you communicate your wish? My wish is to want to die. Can you let me die? Or the other way around. You feel that nobody's giving you food. Nobody's giving you water. Maybe they want me to die a natural death because they want to commiserate with me. But then, here I am, God-fearing. I want to be alive. How do you tell them, mga puta kina nyo, gusto ko pang mabuhay, huwag nyo akong pabayaang mamatay. How do you tell them, fuck you, I want to live, don't let me die? So, everybody, how do you communicate if you're that kind of soldier? Under that situation? Well, let's get some answer. How do you communicate? All right, how does the story end? Because this is an actual novel. This is an actual movie. How does the story end? Well, secret. Secret. You have to see this film on your own. All right? Now, what's the message? The message is this. All right? The message is this, Mr. Iringan. All right? In the absence of your physical, material, observable medium, you cannot use language. No language. All right? No communication. That's what we're saying. Your language is a tool. albeit a tool in your cyberspace, a tool in your mind, but it is nevertheless a tool. You know, like when you play, what? Mobile Legends. When you play Mobile Legends, you have to choose among a number of tools, yes? Oh, sino sa inyo nagmo-Mobile Legends? Of course, you have tools, yes? When you play Mobile Legends. These tools are not physical tools in the sense that they are like your tables and chairs and your pens, but they are nevertheless tools. Well, just like the tools that you pick up with your games, you know, Mobile Legend games. You know what I'm talking about? Or ano ba yung mga games ninyo? Yung vegetables versus the zombies. Yan. Ano yung mga ibinabato nyo dun sa mga zombies? Alright, they are called tools, yes? They are called tools in some abstract sense. Well, just like those kinds of tools, you know, your linguistic expressions are tools. They are physical tools. Vengarium Leviosa. That's only in the movies, all right? There's no magic with your language. There's no magic with your words, all right? Your terms are your tools, all right? Tools that you use. No different from your pens or your shoes or your computers or your cell phones, all right? Language is a system of units realizable in some sensory medium, therefore, physical, material in nature, observable, therefore, they are tools that you use. Okay? Your terms are tools that you use. Any questions so far? Oh, I forgot. Let me share again. Let me share again. All right. You have your Mobile Legends, remember I told you. And when you play your game Mobile Legends, or you play your game Vegetables versus the Zombies, you have your tools. They are not physical as in literally physical material tools, but they are nevertheless physical material in some sense. We'll talk about that later. They are tools that you can use. Like your terms, all right? Terms. They are physical material, not anything magical. Physical, material, not anything magical, all right? So far, so good. Okay. So language is a system of units realizable in some sensory medium, therefore physical tools that we use. Only certain combinations of which have meaning by convention. Oh my God, what does that mean? Only certain combinations of which have meaning by convention. What are we talking about here? Okay. Here we go. Okay. You have what? A term. What is it? A tool. What do you do with the tool? You use it. All right, you have a term. A term. Obviously, because you're able to use it, there is some meaning to the term. Because you're able to use terms, then you presume there is some meaning to the term. Next question, how can you describe the relationship between the meaning of a term and the term? So you have the term is related to the meaning. How do you describe the relationship? All right, let me call your attention to a triangle. Supposing you have a triangle, all right, we know that when the interior angle of a triangle changes in magnitude, a corresponding external angle will change in magnitude. Yes. If this changes, then this changes. But then if this changes, what else can change? Then this will change. All right? So if this changes, what are we saying? Well, between the angles of any given triangle, there is what we might call a functional relationship. Functional, you know what I'm talking about, as in algebraic functions or trigonometric functions. All right, there is, in other words, some functional or mathematical kind of relationship. Question: is the relationship between a term and its meaning functional or mathematical? I'm sure you will say no. It's not functional nor mathematical. All right? That's one possibility. And we say no. It cannot be that. Next question. Is the relationship between a term and its meaning something else? Imagine a mother. Imagine a mother. All right. How do you draw a mother? Oh my God. A mother. All right. There you go. Imagine a mother with a child. There you go. All right. A mother and a child. Excuse me. So how do I draw this child? Well, something like that. Okay. Question: is the relationship between a mother and a child? Paano nangyari yan? Okay. I pressed something, I don't know. Anyway, imagine a mother and a child. All right. Question: how can we describe the relationship between a mother and a child? Well, we'll say it's natural. Natural. All right. How else can we describe it? Well, we'll say it's biological. All right, biological. Next question. All right. Next question. Is the relationship between a term and its meaning natural? Or is it biological? And I'm sure you will say no. So it's neither functional, neither mathematical, neither natural, nor biological. So, big question. All right, pardon my expression. Huh? I feel bored here, alone. How the fuck do you describe this relationship between a term and its meaning? All right. Let me tell you about this fellow. You know, Paul Gauguin looks like him. You know Paul Gauguin, a painter, a good friend of Vincent van Gogh. Paul Gauguin, Vincent van Gogh, and many of his friends, contemporaries of Jose Rizal, contemporaries of Nicholas Tesla, age of inventors, 19th century. There was a place in Europe that was full of artists. Artists like Paul Gauguin, artists like Vincent van Gogh, and they dressed up unconventionally like this fellow. And that place was Bohemia. Bohemia. All right? Bohemia is a place somewhere near Germany and Austria. All right? Here it is. All right, there you go, Bohemia. This is Sweden, Norway, all right, the British Isles. All right, Netherlands, that's Bohemia. Big place. And there used to be a lady who was very much in support of artists like Paul Gauguin and Vincent van Gogh. And so artists would go to Bohemia, and they dressed up unconventionally like this fellow, and so there came to be a way of expressing how you look when you look unconventionally, and they used to say, well, you look so bohemian. What's a bohemian? Bohemian. All right? Bohemian means a resident of Bohemia, all right? But that used to be the original meaning. All right? Bohemian was used to denote people from this part, excuse me. But later, the name Bohemian became what? A socially unconventional person. So this is an example of a socially unconventional person. That's the 19th century. All right? Later on, a socially unconventional person came to look like this. You know, the word for this kind of person, unconventionally looking like that, is called a beatnik. Why a beatnik? All right, this is the expression, beatnik. All right, there was a time when a new kind of music came around thanks to African Americans. And this used to be so popular in France. And those people who go to listen to this kind of music, we call them jazz music, they dressed up this way. And they would have shades. Why? Because in France, they would smoke pot and they would smoke hashish and their eyes would turn red. And they like the beat of the music. All right? They'll go this way. It's the beat, man. It's the beat. Yeah, man. I like the rhythm, man. And so they came to be known as beatniks. And beatniks were unconventional in behavior. They smoke pot, and they like music, and they like very different type of art. And they did double with art, and they wrote novels that are unconventional. And they like unconventional music, like playing with the bongo or the guitar. And so they were called beatniks. Later on, beatniks later became known as, well, this kind of people, my generation. Yeah. See my hair now? I used to have hair this long, over my shoulders. And I used to have a kind of band over here, and I would have flowers. I come to UP with the band, long hair, flowers, and my pants would be like like some broom that I can sweep the floor with. They were called bell bottoms. And the hips of my pants were way, 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 way below, and they were called hipsters. And I would have a pendant this big, meaning to say peace, and this was my favorite expression, peace, man. And because we would use this kind of pants called hipsters, we were called hippies. All right, that's how I looked before, hippies. And hippies were unconventional. Why? Because we did not like the kind of civilization we have. We are destroying our environment, and we want going back to nature. And so we celebrated what we call the Earth Day. And we warned everybody, if the world is going in this direction, we will destroy the world. You know, Vietnam War, nuclear war, someday the whole world will be destroyed. And so we want going back to nature, flower power. That's what we used to say. And we were unconventional in behavior, so we were called hippies. Hippies later became known as what? Became known as punks. Punks later became known as what? Hip-hops. Hip-hops later, in the Philippines, we call them... Oh, excuse me. I forgot to share my my slides. All right. Let me rewind. The time of the 19th century, unconventional people were called Bohemians. First part of the 20th century became known as beatniks. Another part of the 20th century became known as hippies, like me. Another part of the 20th century, they became known as punks. Punks later became known as what? hip-hops, and life goes on. Excuse me. So what's going on? The relationship between a term and its meaning has become what? Well, understandable to us as a result of some convention. Convention coming from the word convere, meaning to say to come together and agree. Convention dependent on the historical, geographic, cultural, etc. Context. That's the big word, context. You change the context, you have your expression bohemian. You change the context, you have the expression beatnik. You change the context, you have the expression hippie, and then punk, and then hip hop, and then life goes on. I think they are today called here in UP. Well, we used to call them Jeprox, coming from the word project, because you know, in my time, we used to buy marijuana from Project 6, Project 7, Project 8, and we did not want people to know where we were going, so we called this place as Jekpro. And the people, we see them Jeprox. All right? But what's the point? You change the context, you change the convention. All right? And this changes across time. From the 1800s, all right, to the 21st century. All right? That's what's going on across time, changing context, cultural, economic, political context, you change your agreement as communities. Bakit? Why? Remember, words are tools. Tools that you use. Used to what? To communicate with one another, and this must be useful for the community. And for the community to use it, there must be some kind of a convention. There must be some kind of a convention. So language is a system of units, realizable in some sensory medium, only certain combinations of which have meaning by convention. There you go, by convention. And hence, useful for communication. Okay, the last part of it. And hence, useful for communication. All right. Everybody knows how to communicate. You know why? Because our capacity to wield language is natural. It's genetic. It's genetic. So, because it's genetic, it's natural. I'll tell you about it later. Genetic. We have evidence for that. In other words, natural. In other words, because it's natural, I don't need to explain what communication is all about. You know what communication is all about. That's the primary. Let me repeat that. That's the primary function of a language. All right? Primary. That's the most important function of a language. And it's natural to you, therefore I will not explain. However, there are what we might call secondary. There are what we might call secondary functions of a language. They are also important, but not equally important. They are also important, but not equally important. Nevertheless, they're still important. And so we talk about them. There are three secondary functions of a language. There are three secondary functions of a language. One of them, we use language to transfer and accumulate knowledge. Transfer and accumulate knowledge. Very important. Without language, you do not have civilization. You have many, many things known to you because we are able to transfer and accumulate knowledge better. You see, if you can only use your genetic inheritance, you know, a single chromosome, a single allele, your chromosomes can contain only the equivalent of 10,000 characters. Very limited. The equivalent only of 10,000 words. Very limited. But when you have a language, for example, with English, when you have English, guess what? With English, we can have 1.5 million words. So much information can be contained. Therefore, so much information you can transfer, information you can accumulate. Guess what? How do you know you are the sons and daughters of your parents? Well, you'll tell me, well, I have my birth certificate. Well, what if your birth certificate is a fake? Well, I look like my dad. Well, if I look like some joker, therefore I am the son of the joker. Well, what I'm saying is, you have never seen out of personal experience that you've been born out of your mom. All right? How do you know the world is round? The world is round. Have you ever gone out of the world? No. So how do you know the world is round? It is through communication with some language. Somebody knows it, and therefore you know it. Like the Chinese would say, wise is a man who learns from the experience of others. Sorry, wise is a man who learns from his experience, but wiser is a man who learns from the experience of others. Thanks to language, we can transfer and accumulate knowledge better. All right? Secondly, what? With language, you can see more. Language enhances perception. Language enhances perception. Supposing one of you, let's see, supposing, well, who can I say? Mr. Aryan Ray, no? Well, anyway, supposing one of you takes a girlfriend to a taekwondo bout, a taekwondo tournament. Now, what will happen? Well, you, the taekwondo jin who plays taekwondo, will say, wow, this guy is so excellent. His turning side is so fast. His turning long is so accurate. His axe kick is so timely. This fellow, he only knows 45s. Well, because you have terms, you can see more. All right? Thanks to your terms, let me repeat that. Thanks to your terms, you can see more. All right? Thanks to your terms, your perception is enhanced. While your girlfriend who does not know anything about taekwondo, your girlfriend will say, well, he's good, and this guy is not good, and that's the most I can say. Thanks to your capacity for language, you see more. All right? Some people will see many kinds of bread. What kind of bread? Ox blood red, dragon blood red, all right? Crimson, all right? And so on and so forth. But some people will only say, well, I see red, and that's it. All right? So language enhances your perception. Because language enhances your perception, here you go. Language also enhances what? Enhances how you think. Let me repeat. Because your language enhances your perception, then you see more of the universe. You have a word for this, the tree. You have a word for this, the Carabao. You know what I'm talking about. You have a word for this and this and this and this and this. Because you have many words for the things that you see, then you have many ways of thinking about your words. So that's the third function of a language. All right? You think better. Language enhances thinking. All right? What? Language enhances language enhances thinking. You think better. You have better method of reflection. All right? And the Greeks have always known that. So, what are the secondary functions of a language? One, transfer and accumulation of knowledge. All right? Transfer and accumulation of knowledge. Two, enhances your perception. And three, enhances your thinking. Three, enhances your thinking. Very good. What does that mean? The more words you have in your mind, the higher IQ. That's the reason why when you enter the university, let me repeat, the more words that you have in your mind, the higher IQ. That's the reason why when you enter the university, remember, you have your UPCAT exam, there are many word meaning questions. There you go. Our definition about a language is, what's our definition of a language? Here it is. Language is a system of units realizable in some sensory medium, only certain combinations of which have meaning by convention and hence useful for communication. All right, that definition, as I have explained it, will be very important up to the very last day of our course. Up to the very last day of our course. When we try to understand, for example, artificial intelligence, we need to go back to that definition. Unfortunately, I have lost time. I'm so sorry. I'm so verbose. I say so many things and so many stories. All right, I'll do better next time. If you have more comments, please give your comments here on YouTube or your comments here on our Google Classroom section for comments. All right. Okay. Thank you for keeping me company. All right. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I'll see you next meeting. All right. Hope I do a better broadcast next time. Well, I'm getting the hang of it. You know, I'm an introvert. An introvert like me, doing broadcasts like this, you know, I'm a geek. I'm a geek. I'm into many things geeky. I don't like broadcasting all over the world. I feel, and here I am doing broadcasting. Well, I hope I will do better next time. All right. End of broadcast. Good afternoon. Hope you enjoyed the discussion.